So I went back to school, and it was just about ended. The teachers were willing for me to make up their work because I didn't miss an awful lot. They said, study over the summer, and in September we'll give you tests on what you missed. But I had to go to the Dean of Women, and teachers were in plentiful supply in those years. No one could get teaching positions. So she said, oh, Miss Kazan, I remember her name, would suggest that you start all over. So I started all over, went in a year to Montclair. They changed to the four-year school, to which your father went, and your mother did too, your sister.
Right.
And then I had to go to Newark to finish the second year. And of course, then I had a teaching position. I then went to Patterson to get my BS, and then I went to Montclair for my MA. By that time I was married, and of course Martin and my husband helped me by doing housework and cooking, so it was a big help.
Your husband's name was?
Martin.
Was also Martin, okay. What did he do?
He was an engineer with the State Highway Department, road building.
Did you continue teaching even after you got married?
Yes, I continued. As I say, I was able to work for my degrees because they were there. Martin did the house, little Martin did the housework. I was going to get somebody to do it. He said, I'll do it, Ma, $2 a week. So he polished everything, cleaned everything. Dishes he did for the week, for a quarter a week. Well, he volunteered to do that. And then it was very fortunate because in winter my husband was off because highways aren't built in winter. And I was busy. Summer I was off and he was very busy, so it really worked out beautifully. The child was never unsupervised. So we grew up and we became very attached. He's been a very good son. I couldn't wish for a better or kinder person. He's been very good to me. And I didn't believe in corporal punishment. I used to use psychology on him. He would do something wrong, and I would sit him down and say, now Martin, you did thus and so. Now you name your own punishment. He'd name it worse than I would have given. So it worked out beautifully, and my husband always had a laugh over that. He said, he was amazed how well it worked. And well, we got along well together, and it helped.
Good.
This is taking pictures?
Yeah, it's taking. No, we're not going to do everything on video, but...
Will this be shown in Hollywood or New York?
I don't know if anywhere.
Well, someday John does, writes a play or something, or writes a movie, about his family. He's always said that he wanted to do something like that,
Yeah.
You never know.
I wouldn't expect it right away, though.
No, yeah.
John's a shutterbug like his father.
I think, did you necessarily pass on anything you might consider as being like ethnic traditions to Martin, and onto?
I got the impression that your family growing up identified more as German than Czech. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't see too much of our grandmother, as I say, she was rather strange, and we would go visit her at Easter time, and we didn't live too far away when she bought the house in Clifton. And we were going to originally, maybe we were looking for a place after your father was at home from the war, and there was a flat advertised in Clifton that happened to be my grandmother's flat. So my aunt said, well, you could take it, but the boy could play on my side of the street. Well, we thought, we knew it was my grandmother's flat. This was no environment for the boy. So we finally ended up in a flat in Patterson belonging to a relative of my husband. And then we bought the property in Wayne and built the house there. And that was the story there.
Is it the house that you moved out of when you came here?
No, we went to Village West in Lakehurst and Manchester. We were there 6 years, and then I bought the house on Rigby Court. but by then my husband was pretty ill and had to go to the nursing home. So that was the end of that.
I don't think what other questions I asked everyone else. Or all the interviews are starting to blur together, you know.
Well, you want to hear something funny? When we lived on Alps Road, your father's family came over to visit, and we set up a table in the living room. We had a large living room, and we had, I think, some soda, and one of them, I think it was Tom, spilled it on the floor, and I said, "Well, Tom, what are you doing?" He said, "That's all right, they have a vacuum cleaner." You remember that?
I don't quite remember that, but
No, well, you were all very small.
I mean, I remember, we've got a lot of photos and even movies in later years of going to Alps Road and around that table. So yeah.
Well, you were small. You didn't take movies when you were that age.
Right.
But your mother didn't come over too often. She was afraid you'd fall out over the cliff because it's our property drop. But there were all bushes there. They could have been more than scratched a little bit.
It's not that different from our front yard.
Yeah.
No, you have a slope to your yard.
Right, yeah.
But this was a cliff, and then it dropped off in the back. But I don't think she wanted to visit too much. Cause it was more Kohout than Fleischer, right? I think you remember that.
Yeah, she was very close to her sisters.
So we missed a lot.
She's still around.
Now you can tell me more about my grandfather, Walter. Maybe stories you remember about him,
Or did he tell any stories?
Yeah.
Were there any family traditions or
Well,
stories about the old country or
I remember when he went to
something
school
strange
in
like
Germany, his aunt, well, that's the wind. The aunt was the teacher. I think it was a one-room school. And it was his job to carry the coal scuttle in for the stove. I remember him telling that. It was a very small town. Greitz, Germany, evidently the small town. I guess it's in southeastern Germany.
We found it on the map. We were actually driving in the direction of it when we decided we didn't have enough time. One time when we were
I
in the
think
Czech
it was,
Republic.
it became in East Germany.
Right. It's not far from what's now the Czech Republic. It's probably 50 miles.
Oh,
at
really?
most.
As close as that?
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, that's a coincidence, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Right.
I don't remember too much about his early life. I don't remember that he said too much about it. I think he went fishing with his Uncle Gustav. And that's how he became interested in fishing. And as I said, every summer when he had vacation, we'd rent a bungalow at Lake Montbassia and go there.
Now, was it sometimes a tent and sometimes a bungalow? Or
Sometimes. Oh, well,
I thought I remember seeing a
in the
photo
beginning, we lived in a tent.
in front of a tent.
Big
Right.
tent. I remember that. Well, a lot of people did. And then later they had bungalows they rented out. And there was, of course, no bathroom in the place. And any water you needed, you had to go to the well and get it. There's no running water. It was rather primitive according to today's living.
Can you tell me anything about Great Depression and World War II and just different, maybe how your lives changed at all during those times?
Well, there certainly wasn't much money around, and my father would come home from work and say, "Well, so-and-so was let go today," and he was very nervous and concerned about losing his job. Of course, that was a concern too, because he was the breadwinner of the family. But, and I think he probably should have stayed home sooner. He probably wouldn't have died as young as he did, but he was afraid to stay home. He thought he'd lose his job. So this is what happened. Too bad, but times were bad. People were out of work. Jobs were not to be had. Fortunately, I was able to get a teaching job, but he knew somebody through the Masonic Lodge, and that's how I got a job. No money involved, but people were paying for the jobs. But you had to know somebody, and this is how I got the job. I'm willing to admit that because it's the truth.
Which was teaching where?
That
That first teaching job was where?
at school 11, where your
Oh, okay, so that was your very first.
where your mother went
year.
and your aunts and uncle went. I had all 4 of them in school.
Yeah.
Okay.
School 11.
And then later, my grandmother went to go teach at that same school as well, right? And were you a principal?
Yes. No, I wasn't principal.
Oh, you weren't
I
principal
was
at that time?
teaching 7th and 8th grade. I think
Okay.
hers was 4th, 3rd or 4th.
Okay. And you introduced my grandparents, right?
Mm. That's how it all started, huh?
So what do you remember of World War II? I mean, so it must have been a pretty
Well,
dramatic time to be even on the
well,
domestic front.
I was going with Mart, and Walt was working, your father working for the Prudential, and he said to Walt, he said, Walt, you know, if I were you, I'd enlist, because he said, if you wait till you're drafted, you'll be in the trenches. So your father enlisted and was sent to MIT, and that's how it started. He became an officer, and if he hadn't done that, he might have been in the trenches. So he took my husband's advice and did that. And he would write letters, and we'd write letters back and forth. And Mark took pictures. He was very good in photography and developing his pictures. And he took pictures, and we sent them to your father when he was in England and France or wherever he was. I understand he was in the group which predicted the best time to invade for D-Day. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think that's one I
Yeah, he
heard.
was a meteorologist,
Mm-hmm.
and he was one of the group which
Right, weather was one of the big concerns there.
they decided with the proper cloud cover for the invasion.
Hmm.
Now that's quite distinctive.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Did he tell you any other stories about his time?
Well, I didn't know
service?
because they couldn't write too much because that was censored,
Yeah.
so we didn't get to know too much.
Did he tell you much after the fact, maybe, or? No?
Well, when he came out, we didn't talk too much about it. And then shortly after he started going with your grandmother and they were married, we moved to Patterson, and that was it.
Hmm.
And then 6 months later they moved out, so my mother had to sell her house. She couldn't eat it, and she went to live with my sister. And I guess my mother would write about how awful it was to have a little boy around the house and how annoyed she was. He wrote back, "Don't worry, Ma. In any event, you'll always live with me." Famous last words. So she banked on that, and it, of course, didn't come to pass.
So when did your sister and Dave Robinson get married?
Well, they were married, 3 years before me. We lived at 130 Clinton Avenue then. I remember the church was being repaired, so they were married in our home at 130. I went to live in Nutley in an apartment. She was the bride and I was the bridesmaid. I have a picture of her somewhere.
Maybe you already said it, but when were you and Martin married?
1944. That was during World War II.
Yeah, do you remember anything about like rationing or how that affected you at all during World War II?
Well, we had red stamps, and we could only get so much sugar or so much meat or butter.
Mm-hmm.
Gasoline was rationed too. It was a little difficult, but we managed. What else? Everybody had to manage.
Yeah.
And I remember my grandmother, my mother's mother, being an old lady, instead of getting on line, she'd push her way up to the front, and being an old lady, nobody would say anything. Usually there'd be kind of a riot if you tried to get to the front of the line out of your place, but she managed to elbow her way in, which wasn't fair, but that happened. I remember that.
Now you said that during World War I you would get the Cootie Scribes, as you called them. Do you do anything like that during World War II? Anything any sort of support? I know, like that sort of thing was big during that.
No, the worst part of World War II was the rationing, and even toothpaste. You couldn't get another tube of toothpaste unless you brought the old one to the drugstore to redeem it to get a new tube of
To
toothpaste.
prove that you'd used it up, huh?
Can you imagine that? Because they were supposedly using the metal for something in the war.
Oh, that's right,
Because they're still military stuff.
And I think cans were recycled and a lot of things for war purposes. Whether they used them or not, I don't know, but it made the people very conscious of the need to conserve those things.
I also want to know something about, like, just especially in the way you raised Martin and things like that. What kind of values do you think you stressed in your children, as well as what kind of values did your parents stress with you?
Oh, honesty. My mother always said, you don't steal anything, not even a penny. And that has stuck with me. I mean, that was, you know, we were trained to be honest and truthful. Heaven forbid if you told a lie. No, we were raised to be good citizens.
So were things like politics important in your household? Is it?
No, that wasn't discussed much. I think my people always were Republicans, but we didn't talk about that. Well, anyway, children, when we were children, that didn't mean anything to us. And I remember, I can tell you somewhere when my brother was little. Would you like to know that?
Sure.
Well, my mother and sister and I wanted to go to the movies one night. He was about 5 years old. He wanted to go too. And we said, no, stay home with Pa. And he said, I want to go to the movies. Even if you kill me, I want to go. And then we went to buy shoes. We wanted to get high-top shoes. Oh, no, he wanted Oxfords. He wouldn't wear, you know, they weren't too high-top. And he was very adamant about what he wanted, what he didn't want.
Very particular about shoes, huh?
Those are a couple of things I remember. And then on Saturdays, I used to work selling shoes in Qualkenbush's and Patterson. So he'd always wait for me when I came home. Did you bring me Editon, he would say. That's the way he said it. And I always brought him from 5 and 10 a bag of peanuts or a bag of candy. He looked forward to that, and that he liked.
What historical events or news events, big news events, do you remember from the early years that really stuck with you?
Well, I don't know. Of course, when it was E-Day, when Europe surrendered, and then when Pacific, of course, the country went wild. I remember the celebrations that went on, and everybody was so happy and so relieved. And of course, they were glad to have the soldiers come home. Of course, unfortunately, a lot of them didn't come home. But that's the way it goes. I don't know. I can't remember anything much. I know your father went to Montclair, and one time there was a hurricane, and he called up. He couldn't get a bus to come home. So I drove to Montclair to get him. I was driving at the time. And it's a wonder I made it because trees fell all over and it was pretty awful. I remember that. I guess he was a good student. He was a math major, and he became in the actuary position in the actuary department in the crew. That was his first assignment. He did practice teaching in Clifton High, but after his practicum, he said, no way do I want to teach those awful kids. He said, a bunch of fresh kids, because the teacher he had gave him the worst kids to teach, and that turned him off. He didn't want teaching, which was just as well. I think he did better where he was.
So after he came back from the war, he then went to law school, correct?
Well, he went right back to the Prudential, because in those days they made the people hold their jobs. They could go back to their jobs.
Yeah. He graduated from law school. He went to law school in Knights, and he graduated in '54, I think. So it was actually probably like from 50 to 54 that he was in law school.
Okay. So
I think he did that after he was married, though. Did he go to law school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that you went just for night school?
But he couldn't go for...
I remember him coming home at night at like 9 or 9:30 for a while.
He couldn't practice law because he could never do the clerking, because he'd have to give up his job to do that, so we
Yeah.
didn't.
You never actually took the bar test, right?
No, right.
You just do it for the personal experience, that sort of thing?
Well, his work involved contracts, so
Okay.
his work was legal work.
Okay.
And once he was married, we didn't see much of him, so I can't tell you anything.
And he didn't.
about
I mean, in other
that.
words, he didn't. It's being in the bar is sort of like a license. He didn't need that
Yeah.
license in order to do.
No, but it helped
in order
him
to use his
in
law.
writing up the
knowledge.
contracts.
Yeah. Let's see.
No, as I say, we didn't see too much of him after he was married. He was involved with the co-house side more than our side.
Do you have any, like, big changes in, like, your lifestyle and things like that? Especially in terms of, like, technology.
Well, after my father died, I was young. I was only 22. And I didn't go out on dates or anything until quite late because I was devoted to the family. I had to take care of finances and everything else, take care of shopping, take care of my mother. My sister and I paid for my brother's college. We saw to him that he went through college. So I got to be close to 30 and I thought, well, wake up. I didn't want this to be my lifestyle, to just stay home all the time. So then I dated a couple people and I finally met Mark, and from there on, that's what the story was.
Yeah, it's all the tapes in. Let's see. How do you think that technology has changed your life? Have you sort of gradually integrated into your life? Did you sort of resist some certain things, or
You mean my educational background?
No, like just I don't know exactly what I'm asking here. I don't know. Like, you can clarify that in terms of talking about.
Well, I mean, certainly some of the things you already mentioned about how your parents were dating in the horse and buggy days, and
Mm-hmm.
and how at various times you couldn't. There's no public transportation to Garfield, so you had to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one aspect of it. Do you remember when you had your first radio?
I remember my aunt had one of those crystal radios.
Hmm.
We'd go to her house in Garfield, and there'd be a wire you'd kind of scratch on the crystal till you got WDKA in Philadelphia. I think that was the principal station in those days. And I don't remember, I guess eventually we got a radio. It wasn't a crystal set because that was the marvel of the time, the crystal set. You can't imagine compared to today's communication, something like that.
Do you eagerly accept all these things? I mean,
Oh, sure. Well, that was a good way of finding things out. Of course, there were programs on and news, nothing much. And stations weren't on all the time, like they are today.
You never had a favorite program?
We had John Gambling in the morning. Original John Gambling, that would have been the grandfather of the one who now works for WABC. Do you ever listen? Oh, you would listen to him, I guess.
No.
He's on only Saturdays. He was fired from WOR.
Right, I
His
remember that name.
grandfather, his father, and he were on it. It spanned distance of 75 years, I believe, that families were on. It was continuous. But he's very good. I mean, he's done a good job with WABC. I listen to him Saturday mornings. People call in and say, why can't he be on more? And he said, well, he didn't say, but I think they're working on it. But I think it has gone over very big with the audience. But John Gambling, in those days with exercises, and you could send away for exercise sheets. The wagon wheel with your legs, you'd go this way, and other exercises. They had a real orchestra playing there. Not like today, everything is pre-recorded and canned music and one thing and another. So we enjoyed that. Oh, and then it was Amos and Andy came on. We liked that. Fibber McGee and Molly. You don't remember all those? No, they were popular then.
I mostly heard those every now and again on some like public radio. They'll have a whole broadcast of some of those things. Like I think it was driving back last time from Syracuse, actually, like in the middle of the night.
Which one was
One,
that?
where they had a Fibber McGee and Molly episode.
Well, what was that show about? Like, what was the premise of the show?
Well, it was a man and his wife, and different episodes people would come in.
Yeah, it was a comedy.
To a comedy. And the famous part of it, every once in a while they'd open the closet and all the stuff would fall out and you hear all that clatter and, and that was a
The particular
famous
episode they played on this night, I remember, was that Fibber McGee bought a horse, but he had already had a discussion with his wife about it, and they decided not. She said, "No way, we're going to buy a horse." And so, but he bought the horse anyway, and was keeping it in their garage, and and the story developed from that.
Uh-huh.
And and one of the reasons for buying the horse is during the war was to save wear on the tires of the car.
Because you couldn't replace the tires as well.
Right.
Not to mention gasoline was rationed.
Yeah.
I remember we had extra tires and my godmother's son came home. He was shot down in a B-17 bomber over Germany with a prisoner of war. And my husband gave him the tires. He was glad because he couldn't buy tires. But he eventually committed suicide because the Korean War was about to come. And he said, "Oh, I could never go to another war." So he was a policeman in Woodridge. And a day off he went to the police department, found a gun in the drawer and shot himself. He just couldn't take it. Now they talk about the Jewish people, how they suffered in the camps. He suffered terribly in the German camp. He came home all emaciated, with skin and bones, and talked about the misery and the poor treatment of the camp. And here he was, an American soldier with a German name, German parents, and he was mistreated. So it wasn't only the Jewish people who were mistreated, there were others too.
Yeah.
And another thing, a friend of mine too, in Germany, she lived there. She said they didn't know what was going on with those concentration camps. But her father, they dealt with a Jewish store.
Hold on just 1 second.
This is not recording anywhere?
I just gotta flip the tape.
Flipping tapes.
Oh. And they weren't allowed to do that. So somebody told on him. The next day he was conscripted into the army and eventually was captured by Russian soldiers and had to go to Russian concentration camp in Siberia. He was away for years and he existed on eating pussy willows.
Wow.
And finally he came home and appeared at the door. So that was
Wow.
it.
It's like Dr. Schwager.
I really have to go to the bathroom, so I will.
Yeah.
Hold on, it's just one.
Well, I feel like one tape here.
Okay. Where's your bathroom? Is it?
It's there.
What do you
Yeah,
want?
that is too long. I don't know.
The
What?
bathroom.
Oh, wait, no, to the left. To the left.
Yeah, you don't have a laundry.
Right there.
It'd be all sorts of problems. Thank
It's
you.
over now?
Well, if you'd like to ask some more questions, she just needed to take
I don't
a...
know what else I can say, but I'll probably think of it later.
Yeah. Well, do you want to look at over some photos and stuff? I mean, if you want to...
Is it okay, go now?
Yeah, you can go down.
Your father. Okay, so my great grandfather, right?
Here's your grandfather when he came home from the war.
And that's with you, right? Or is that with
Yes.
That one's on the website.
This is me when I was about 2 years old.
You missed that one? What was your dog's name?
Carol. That was
Carol.
my grandfather's
Oh, it
dog.
was your grandfather's dog. Okay.
That's right. Put on autofocus. I was wondering why I can't get the
This
angle
one
focus
has
to
my
work. It's not
cousins on
autofocus.
it. They're both dead by now, too.
Got it. Finally.
Oh, you want to see a picture of me at 3 months of age?
Oh, a cute little kid.
Oh, okay.
This is the first grade picture.
Was this at your christening? Is that what?
It must have been Christmas, and I was born in September, so you figure out how old that was. Oh, here's your grandfather again on that picture. when he came home from the war.
So that's my grandfather, and then that must be his mother, right? That's your mother?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are the girls in this picture you and Helen?